Hey everyone, welcome back. You guys sent in some seriously cool stuff for us to deep dive into today. We're going to talk about unlikely heroes. Those people who had a real impact, but for whatever reason, they just haven't made it into the mainstream history books.
Right, and some of the stories are wild.
Yeah, like, did you know we're going to be talking about a talking whale?
Yeah, a talking whale. It sounds like something straight out of legend, like a myth, but it's a true story. And it brings up some really fascinating questions about animal intelligence, like how much do they really understand?
Totally. Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit. We're back in the 1970s, and the U.S. Navy, they've got this program called Cold Ops.
Cold Ops, yeah. It was basically all about research and development focused on marine mammals,
Okay.
specifically belugas. They were really interested in how to use these belugas, especially in those super cold Arctic conditions.
So, like, what were they thinking? What were they trying to get these belugas to do?
Well, they were looking at a whole range of things, like, could these belugas help us find things that have been lost underwater? Can they detect mines? Could they even, help guard naval bases? Kind of wild stuff.
Wow. I mean, that is wild. And this is how Nonk, our talking beluga, comes into the picture, right?
Yeah, Nonk was one of the belugas that the Navy captured up in the Arctic.
And how do they even capture him up there?
Well, they had these Inuit hunters, right? And these guys were experts at lassoing belugas from these small boats. It's almost like, picturing those old westerns with the cowboys lassoing Mustangs.
It's kind of crazy to imagine.
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible sight. And then they'd take these captured belugas all the way from the Arctic down to San Diego for training.
I mean, that's a huge transition, going from those icy Arctic waters to sunny San Diego. Did they adjust? Okay.
Well, it's definitely a whole different world for them, and it really makes you wonder how they coped with such a drastic change. And it's right there in San Diego, at one of these Navy facilities, where Nonuk's story starts to get really, really interesting.
Okay, so spill the tea. What happened?
Well, people started hearing these strange noises coming from the whale enclosure.
What, like weird whale calls?
Kinda, but not exactly. It was something different. At first, they thought it was coming from, outside the enclosure, maybe some folks chatting on the pier or something.
Okay, and what was it?
So get this. A Navy diver comes up from a training exercise and he asks, "Who told me to get out?"
Wait, hold up. What?
Yeah, and here's the kicker. Nobody had told him to get out. It turns out it was Norik.
Norik told him to get out.
Yeah, Norik was vocalizing, actually saying the word out. Like he was mimicking what he'd heard from those underwater communication systems that divers used.
So he wasn't just making random whale sounds. He was trying to say a specific word he'd kicked up from the humans.
Exactly. Like, can you believe that?
That's insane.
I know, right?
So what did scientists think about this whole talking whale thing?
Oh, at first, lots of them were skeptical. They were like, come on, a talking whale. But then they started listening and they couldn't deny it. Not would actually say out on command. Sometimes he would keep going for like 30 seconds straight.
Wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't just like a one-time fluke. He seemed to be doing this intentionally. Like he was modifying his vocalizations to match what he was hearing from the humans.
I actually read somewhere that he would change how he used his blowhole and nasal cavities.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that he would even change how he used that fatty bump on his forehead, the melon,
Right, the melon.
Yeah, to try to make those human-like sounds.
That's incredible. Belugas use their melons mainly for echolocation, right?
Yeah.
But in Nock's case, it seemed like the melon played a role in how he was trying to mimic human speech. Like he wasn't just trying to make similar sounds, he was modifying his own vocal anatomy.
So crazy.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was trying to, figure out how to talk to us.
It's mind-blowing, right? I mean, what was going on in Novik's head? Did he understand what the word out actually meant? Was he trying to tell us something? Like, what was he thinking?
Yeah, I mean, those are the million-dollar questions.
Right. For sure.
So did the scientists come up with any answers?
Well, they were debating like crazy. Some argued that he was just mimicking like a parrot repeating sounds without really understanding the meaning. But others thought it suggested that Novik was capable of way more than we give whales credit for.
More than just, hey, that sounds like this, I'm going to copy that.
Right. They were saying that maybe this pointed to a deeper level of thinking, like maybe Noffer even wanted to connect with us, with the humans.
It's interesting, too, because he wasn't mimicking other belugas, right?
Right.
It seemed like he only did this when he was around people.
Exactly. And some of the trainers who worked with Novik, they said he actually seemed to go out of his way to interact with humans. Like he was trying to find a way to communicate with us, to bridge that gap between our species.
That's both amazing and kind of sad at the same time. On the one hand, It suggests that belugas might be way smarter and more socially aware than we realize. But on the other, it makes you think about what it's like for them to be kept in captivity.
Yeah, it's tough. And it makes you wonder if Nonnick's mimicry, as incredible as it was, might have been a sign that he was stressed or bored. I mean, wild belugas don't try to talk like humans. Maybe for Nonnick's, it was a way of coping with being in an environment that was so different from his natural habitat.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah. And there's another thing. One of the trainers mentioned that the belugas in captivity were actually way quieter than wild belugas.
Really?
Yeah. She thought it might be because of the noise pollution from the tanks and stuff. Like maybe they weren't getting those same natural sounds that they're used to in the ocean.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So Namek's story is amazing. It really sparks our curiosity about animal intelligence, but it also forces us to confront some uncomfortable questions.
Like, are we doing the right thing keeping these intelligent animals in captivity?
Exactly. Especially with creatures like belugas who have such complex social structures and ways of communicating.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot to think about.
Nulek's story really makes you think, about all the things we still don't know about animals and how they see the world.
Totally, like, do they get bored? Are they trying to reach out to us? But it also makes me wonder about all those other unsung heroes out there. The ones we never hear about.
Oh yeah, those hidden figures. That's what's so cool about these sources you sent. They're all about those forgotten heroes, the ones history kind of just glossed over.
Right, like history's hidden gems and... Wait, what was that other one called?
They changed history, but no one knows their names.
Yeah, exactly. Those. They're full of stories about people who made a huge difference, but, for some reason, never got the spotlight.
And what's so interesting is when you look at all these unsung heroes together, it shows you how different they all are. Like, it's not just about these big heroic actions, it's also about the people who worked quietly behind the scenes, making things happen without reading a pat on the back.
Yeah, like the people who might not have their names in textbooks, but their work changed everything.
Exactly. And one of the sources talks about Harriet Tubman, who was just incredible. She was so brave, leading enslaved people to freedom on the Underground Railroad.
I mean, talk about courage. Not just the risks she took, but also how smart she was. She knew the land, the stars, the secret roads, everything.
Oh, she was brilliant. She used her knowledge of the Underground Railroad network to outsmart those trying to catch them, guiding people to safety time and time again.
And not just for herself, but for so many others.
Right. Her story shows how heroism can look so different. It doesn't have to be these big, flashy actions. It's often those quiet acts of bravery that really change things.
And another example of that, from the sources, is Alan Turing. He was a mathematician who helped crack the German Enigma code in World War II.
Oh yeah, Turing. He was a genius working at Bletchley Park, this top-secret code-breaking place.
It's mind-blowing that his work basically helped shorten the war and save who knows how many lives.
Absolutely. But he was working in the shadows. Nobody really knew what he was doing at the time.
And that's not all. He was a pioneer in computer science and artificial intelligence. But tragically, he was persecuted because he was gay.
Yeah, it's really sad. It took decades for people to fully appreciate what he had done and to celebrate his accomplishments.
It's a reminder of how history can be so unfair, ignoring the contributions of people because of prejudice. We need to challenge those biases and make sure everyone gets the recognition they deserve.
Couldn't agree more.
And speaking of challenging the status quo, there's Malala Yousafzai. She was just 15 when she was shot by the Taliban because she spoke out about girls' education.
Her story is so powerful, it's unbelievable. She was so young, but she refused to be silenced, even after everything she went through.
She became a global symbol for courage and standing up for what you believe in, for equality.
And it shows that one person's voice, no matter how young they are, can really make a difference and inspire change.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see how all these unsung heroes from different times and backgrounds fought for what they believed in and left their mark on the world.
And it makes you think, right? They didn't get the recognition they deserved, but their impact is still felt today.
It's really inspiring to hear about these people and what they accomplished, but it also makes you wonder why they're not more well known. Like, why don't we learn more about them in school or see movies made about them?
Yeah, why are these stories sort of hidden away?
That's a great question. And looking at all the research you sent, I think a few things stand out. One is that history can be pretty biased. Oh, totally. History is written by the winners, right?
Right. So Those in power, they get to tell their side of the story, but that often leaves out the perspectives of all sorts of other people who played a part.
So we're only getting part of the picture, like looking through a window that's been smudged.
Exactly. And then a lot of times, these unsung heroes, their contributions were more behind the scenes, They weren't always seeking the limelight.
Like they were working quietly, making things happen without needing a big fuss made over them.
Right. Think about the scientists working in labs, the teachers inspiring students, the activists organizing for change. They're doing this super important work, but it's not always the stuff that grabs headlines.
It's the stuff that actually makes the world go round, though.
Absolutely. And there's another thing that contributes to these stories being overlooked: systemic bias. For a long time, women, people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals, their stories just weren't considered as important.
So we're missing huge chunks of history, like whole chapters are just blank.
Yeah, and that gives us a really incomplete picture of the past.
Okay, so given all of that, why does it even matter if we remember these unsung heroes? What's the point of bringing their stories back to life?
It's not just about filling in the blanks, though that's important too. It's about understanding how the world works, how we got to where we are today.
Like understanding all those little actions and choices that led to the bigger events.
Right. And by learning about these people, their struggles, and what they achieved, we can find inspiration for our own lives, It's like, if they could do all that, facing the challenges they did, maybe we can too.
Totally. They show us that even ordinary people can make a difference.
Exactly. And they remind us that history isn't just something in a textbook. It's all around us. We're part of it, and we have a responsibility to make sure everyone's story is told.
And that no one's contributions are forgotten. Wow. That's a lot to think about.
It is.
Well, this deep dive has been amazing. You've given us so much to consider about these unlikely heroes, and I hope everyone listening is as fascinated as we are. It makes you wonder, are there unsung heroes in your own family, in your community, whose story might be waiting to be rediscovered?
That's a great question to ask.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep those stories alive, because those hidden histories are out there, just waiting to be found. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.